Welcome back to Talking Golf with Ann Liguori. And the conversation around Tiger Woods and his legacy has shifted once again after his latest DUI and car accident raises serious questions that go well beyond the game. And joining me is veteran golf writer Bob Harig, senior writer for SI Golf and author of Golf's Great Debate, Tiger versus Jack. Hey, Bob, welcome back to Talking Golf.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And congratulations on yet another book. Excellent book.
Thank you. Yeah, they're quite the chore. It's nice to have it done.
Well, I know your book dives into the themes of greatness, legacy, and how history will judge these two icons. But right now, Tiger is back in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Another DUI arrest following a rollover crash near his home in Jupiter, Florida. What do you make of all of it?
Yeah, look, it's really unfortunate. This is the fourth time Tiger's been involved in a traffic issue that has kind of caused the world to stop. Let's be honest. It's created huge headlines, negative headlines, and this one on top of the others, with what we know about the others, especially the one in 2017, where, look, there was public information that came out in the aftermath of that in terms of what was in his system. We know Tiger's in a lot of pain. He talks about it. It's obvious why he's had so many surgeries. And in that case, he had pain medication in his system and it caused him to fall asleep. They found him behind the wheel at 3 a.m. This time, obviously not as bad as that, but it's still an accident that was bad. And look, I can't sit here and say that he was under the influence. I don't know. But, and he did pass a breathalyzer test, so he hadn't been drinking. But he declined to take the urinalysis test, which is an automatic trip to jail and get your license revoked. And it's going to open up the door to the question, if you were innocent, why didn't you take the test, right? So again, we don't know, but do the math. So I just find it to be really, really unfortunate, the whole thing. I think people were looking forward to the idea of Tiger coming back again this year. And I always counter that with, people, well, why doesn't he retire? I saw where Brandel said that. Why doesn't he quit? He doesn't need to play. That's true. He does not need to play. I don't expect there to be this comeback like we saw in 2018-19. But look, Jack and Arnold and Gary Player, they played major championships into their 60s because they had won them, especially the Masters. Tiger's only 50. It's perfectly within his right to do this if he wants. And that's why, like, I'm just sort of like, I wish he could get to a point where he could have some peace and some clarity to be able to play a few more times. And obviously, this is now another roadblock in that.
Right. And we're seeing a troubling pattern. I mean, this is his second DUI related incident, his fourth
Right.
serious car accident since 2009. And it's not healthy for him. It's not great for golf. And you think if it is painkiller meds, which you would have to guess it is, but we don't know for sure, something has to be done. Don't you think he really needs to address it, and his enablers, the people around him, need to deal with it as well?
Yeah, I tried to write about that this week. I did a thing on how why does Tiger not have a driver? I mean, think of famous people in the world. They get chauffeured around. They don't mess with the driving. Isn't it nice to not have to drive? And so, but I think there's a stubbornness there. I mean, we talk about his handlers. Well, they might get overruled, and I pointed out an example of a time in 2019 when he came to the Golf Writers Dinner and he was getting the Ben Hogan Award. This was the Wednesday night before he went on to win the Masters. And I'll never forget it because I introduced him and I went out there to sort of greet him when he got there. He showed up by himself. He drove his own courtesy car into the parking lot at that pavilion, parked, walked right in, no entourage. His, the people that are with him had come on their own. And, it's sort of like there's so many dozens of examples of Tiger showing up at golf tournaments where he drove the courtesy car and his caddy was in the passenger seat. I mean, not every time, but a lot of times. So I don't know. I can only surmise that maybe Tiger sees driving as a freedom that
Yeah.
he doesn't get as he's a very he lives in this cocoon of a world. He's so famous and I just think he likes to do it. So I mean, it's easy for me to say you shouldn't. And again, now does this lead to the idea that he didn't realize that he was, that he wasn't in a good position to drive? But yeah, of course. I mean, I joke about it because obviously he's not going to do this. But Tiger has two pilots for his plane. He has a captain for his yacht. Why not have a chauffeur for his
Right.
car?
You know what? I think it's a privacy issue, Bob. I really don't think he wants a driver or anybody. I think he relishes, as you say, that time alone. And he just doesn't want people to know what he's doing. He wants to be
Exactly.
completely on his own.
I
Well, do you
think there's something to that for sure. But I mean, what would be the problem with just for routine stuff, going to the golf course, you know, um, I mean, T Tiger doesn't want people to know where he's going on his plane, and yet he has pilots who take him places, and they're sworn to secrecy. They've signed NDAs. You could do the same thing with this, and but again, it's just it's just sort of sad that this has happened again, and it makes you wonder if there have been other close calls that we don't know about. And
And you have to think about his
again,
health too. If he's taking a cocktail of pain meds and this is a reoccurring issue, I mean, that, obviously he's in pain, but that can't be good for him. So, um, anyway, I think, we associate the Masters with Tiger Woods, and there's been much anticipation that, as you say, he may even tee it up, particularly after seeing him with the Jupiter Links in the finals of his TGL. Do you think he's going to play, or I guess the question is, do you think he would have played before this accident, and do you think there's still a chance we could see him play?
I actually think before this accident, he was trending towards playing. I just, and this is only based on what we saw at TGL, his comments. He was going to try. And Tiger, over the last 8, 9, 10 years, has sort of had this mantra of under promising, over delivering. Like he downplayed his comebacks. 10 years ago, I think he rushed, back when he first had the surgeries. But starting with that spinal fusion in 2017, which obviously, by the way, that time when he was found on the side of the road and was arrested for DUI, suspicion of DUI, it was later pled down. That was 6 weeks after the spinal fusion. I mean, my guess is that thing was painful.
Sure.
He was dealing, he couldn't barely swing a club at that time. And so, but when he finally talked to the media later that year, it was at the President's Cup at Liberty National. He was an assistant captain. First time he had talked since the spinal fusion, since that incident, and he had the kind of gloomy quote which said, "I don't know what my future holds for me." And people took that to mean he might be done.
Right.
And like 3 or 4 weeks later, there was video that popped up of him hitting shots. And he played at the Hero. He played at Torrey Pines in January. He clearly was farther along than he was letting on. And if you remember in 2022, when he talked at Riviera that year at his own tournament, he'd made it sound like a comeback in golf was not happening before the summer. What happened? He showed up at the Masters and he made the cut. So that's why I was sort of thinking, I think he's farther along than he's saying. He let himself be seen on TV hitting shots, even though it was only, a simulator. You could still see the ball speed, which was really good. And so I thought he was going to give it a go. I thought, I didn't think it was a certainty. I mean, he could have had a setback. Now this throws that into flux. I do not know. I mean, I could argue it either way. I could argue that getting right back into the arena and trying to get in the good graces of people, he'll be well received there. It might be a feel-good story. On the other hand, does Augusta National want the sideshow again? I mean, look, and somebody was asking me, well, he's going to get questioned. I go, yeah, he'll get questioned and he'll shut it down because there's a legal process and all he has to do is lean into that. Hey, look, this is being decided in the courts and I can't say anything. It's funny. People think that the media, we should have been grilling him all along about all these things. Easier said than done. Tiger's not that available. He has a way of being able to shut down these interviews. There's other things to talk to him about. And if you know you're going to get a non-answer, you'd rather ask him things that he'll answer. And just because, oh, well, just keep asking him until he answers. Doesn't work
No,
that way. It's
no,
not,
they're
that's
all good points. He will not, he knows how to shut it down if he does not like the question. You have very few opportunities to ask him questions. And if he's trying to ask a question like that he's going to shut down, they won't call on you again. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So,
Sure.
and
I mean, like if he were to, let's say he were to play the Masters and he comes to the interview room on Tuesday. All right. Now, it would be silly to ask him, frankly, in my mind. Somebody probably would because it would be planted, but it would be silly to ask him about the opening of the patch, the
right,
golf course there. That
right.
you only have so much time, you only have so many questions. Somebody would probably try to ask him about the accident and he would shut it down. Maybe there might be a follow-up about that. There might be a question or two about, hey, are you having trouble sleeping? Are you having trouble with painkillers? He might talk about that, he might shut that down. But at some point you're going to go, he isn't going there. And so now you're going to ask him, why are you playing? How is your health? It's just it's reality based on fantasy. Like it's easy to sit on the sideline and say, "Man, we should be grilling him," but it doesn't really work that way.
It
In
doesn't work
reality,
that
it's
way for people on the inside who have been in those press conferences and who have tried to ask those questions. And he doesn't say much anyway, as you know. So it will be interesting to see if he shows up or if Augusta National says, you know what, we don't want him dominating the headlines here in a negative light. Based on
right.
this past accident, it would have been great to come talk about the patch, go to the champions dinner, but I don't necessarily, it's such a tough question. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's an
I guess I
opportunity.
would.
If he were to go, Bob, it's an opportunity for him to try, as you say, to regain some, a positive reputation again, which he worked so hard on in the last, decade or so. And he can have, he can be in control of the narrative, basically. But I don't
Right.
know if I can't, I don't know which way it's going to go.
The
It could
way
go
the
either way.
reason you might say they would do it is back in 2010 when, look, this is bad, but that was really bad in terms of his image. And he had a Monday press conference and he was the only person in that day and it was covered worldwide and he got grilled for a half an hour, and so the Masters accommodated that. I remember at the time thinking, and I still do, like, that's incredible that they would do that. They actually gave him a place to have this. So would they do that again? Maybe. I mean, they revere their champions and Tigers won it 5 times and
Hmm.
and so so like I'm very torn about whether or not Augusta National wants him there. I can see both sides of that.
Sure, sure. Well, I think the game has too long been revolving around Tiger Woods. Okay. There are so many other stars, in my opinion, on the PGA Tour who are capable of leading these important boards that are shaping the future of the PGA Tour. I think there are other stars that could captain the US Ryder Cup team.
Hmm.
Why do you think they always come back to Tiger when it relates to all of this off the golf course?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, because for the longest time, Tiger had no interest in any of that kind of stuff. He was so singular. He did not take part in any kind of tour governance for the early part of his career, 10, 15 years in. And I don't know now, his opinion carries a lot of weight. A lot of players look up to him. They view my understanding is at these meetings, people hang on his every word. They think that he has a lot of great things to say, a lot of interesting and introspective things to say. And look, the way it's always gone is Tiger was destined to be a Ryder Cup captain. Right now, I mean, it's amazing to think that two of the guys who you would absolutely have seen be Ryder Cup captains and maybe want to do it for more than once, Tiger and Phil, might not do it at all. And so, and look, forget about this. Tiger was dragging out I'm sorry, forget about what just happened.
Yeah,
Tiger was dragging out this Ryder Cup decision anyway.
that's
The PG,
ridiculous that they allow
yeah.
him to do that.
I mean, the PGA of America, apparently had set a soft deadline. They wanted to know by the Masters. Last time they let it into late June. That's when they picked Keegan. And I'm not saying that Keegan was a bad choice or that they lost the Ryder Cup because they waited until July. I kind of think a lot of that stuff is overblown. But typically they like to have their captain in place by now. Europe has theirs. Luke Donald's coming back for a third time. They show complete organization. The U.S. side looks chaotic, and we don't even know, like, well, if it isn't Tiger, who is it going to be? Are they going to ask Keegan again? I mean, do they go back to somebody who's done it? Like, make a Steve Stricker or somebody like that who's, as great of a guy and as great of a captain as he was. Steve really hasn't been around the game, certainly the regular tour game here for a while. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Tiger might make it easier on him if he just stepped aside. And then the other question I think you're getting to is, does Tiger have such a big role in PGA Tour governance? I mean, he's on the boards of both the PGA Tour Inc. and PGA Tour Enterprises. Um, he's the chairman of this future competitions committee. I mean, he's got a lot of say in what's going on. And, how much does this complicate all that? I don't know. If they want it to be as normal as possible, none of this stuff changes. But I'm just not sure that's the case.
Yeah, I think he has way too much responsibility. And as far as Ryder Cup US captain goes, all this uncertainty does not bode well for US strategy to go to Adair Manor in 2027 and try to beat the European team for sure. I think it's a losing proposition. Well, let's talk about the Masters, Bob Harig, and let's look at the field. Which player's
Hmm.
current form looks best heading into the Masters this year?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking about all this. There's a lot of question marks about guys going in, right? You've got Scotty who is, coming off for him a little bit of just a little bit of a downtime. It's not awful, but it's not where he was. Three straight finishes outside of the top 10 and two outside the top 20. And then, his wife having a baby, so he missed a tournament he was going to play. Um, Rory's coming off a back problem and he hasn't added a tournament. Morikawa's had a back problem playing in San Antonio. I mean, he won a tournament this year. Justin Rose won at Torrey Pines, but he's in his 40s. Um, Tommy Fleetwood hasn't won this year. Jordan Spieth has been erratic. Xander's played nicely lately. So even Gary Woodland, who just won and you'd think would be great at Augusta, got a poor record there. Kind of surprising. As far as he hits it and as strong as he is, not really done very well at the Masters. So, um, my guess is it's the some of the usual suspects will be there, but I'm not convinced they will all be there, and there might be somebody we're not even thinking about.
I know it's anybody's ball game for sure. You mentioned Xander Schauffele, who finished third at the Players. His record at Augusta, five top tens in his last seven starts. So maybe Xander could pull it off this year. Matt Fitzpatrick won the Valspar. He was the runner-up at the Players. He's trending well. Ludwig Oberg, he's ready for a major title. Bryson DeChambeau coming off those wins with Liv. So it's
Yeah,
wide open.
I would throw Rom in there, obviously Cam Young,
Sure.
but I mean, I would throw Rom in there. Rom hasn't finished outside the top five on Live. He has a win in 3 seconds. Look, that's not nothing. And he's obviously been playing very well, and he was much better last year after a tough, in 2024, he wasn't so great in the majors, missed one, he missed the US Open with a foot infection, but he was up there a couple times last year and he's won the Masters. So I don't discount him. Bryson obviously has had three really good Masters in a row. Didn't have a great final round last year with Rory, but he did still have a high finish. So those are two guys that I wouldn't want to dismiss. I mean, actually, I think it's kind of not. I mean, we haven't mentioned Hideki, who's played decent golf this year. I'm just sort of, who knows how Rory's going to bounce back, but I'm just sort of intrigued because I think there's a lot of possibilities.
So many possibilities. And as you mentioned, Rory McIlroy, I mean, it took so much effort for him to finally win that Masters title last year, capturing the career Grand Slam. Does he have that same hunger, that same motivation? I can't imagine he wouldn't try to defend his title at Augusta.
Yeah, look, if Rory is able to get the distractions out of the way, the dinner and all the hoopla over winning last year, I mean, the pressure is off. You've got it. Why not play a little freer and go out
Right?
there and try to get another one? So I think that's very possible for Rory now. And we thought this last year after he won the Masters. Shouldn't this free him up to add a few more? And it didn't really work out that way. He wasn't good at the PGA or the US Open. He had a decent Open Championship, top 10, never really in contention. So let's see how focused he is on that now, and obviously assuming everything's okay health wise.
Who would be your sleeper pick, Bob Harig?
Yeah, wow, a sleeper. Somebody like to come out of nowhere like a Keegan.
Ooh,
I mean, Keegan's still a really, really good player and highly motivated, and not having a great year so far. It's been a little bit off, but I don't know. It just wouldn't surprise me to see him. I don't know if I would say win, but to give it a go.
what separates the players who seem to figure out Augusta National better than some of the others? Is there any one part of your game or anything physically or mentally that you could pinpoint?
Well, I mean, I think mentally you have to get over the aura. I mean, that's why it's hard to win as a first timer. There's so much to take in. There is a lot to learn. Once you get past that, then I think it's very simple. I mean, typically what you see is it's not a foolproof plan. I mean, I don't think Rory led the field in greens and regulation last year, but you need to be up there. You need to hit a lot of greens because obviously first of all you want to give yourself chances. It sounds so obvious, right? But
Right.
there's a lot of places where a guy can hit 8 greens in a tournament and still or in a round and still shoot 67. That's not necessarily the case at Augusta because if you're chipping from the wrong spot, now you're making it hard to make par. You're bringing bogeys into play. Whereas if you're hitting greens, especially the par fives, you're giving yourself chances. And so I just think, it's just getting to yourself into the mode of, let's put it in a position where I can hit it on the green and
And make
and
those
not,
putts. You got to putt.
yep,
You have to
sure.
be
I
just,
mean, and you have to be good too at, when you do miss greens, you're gonna have to make some 5 and 6, 7 footers for par.
yeah,
And
scrambling.
and if you're able to do that, then you're going to hang in there and keep momentum when it comes time for when you need to make the birdie putts.
Bob, in this Tiger versus Jack debate in your book, how much should character and personal conduct factor in, or should it be strictly about winning majors and dominance?
I mean, in all honesty, it's mostly about the on-course stuff. I do talk about their roles, you know, off the course. Jack had a big part in, all those years ago in the tour separating from the PGA of America. Tiger obviously has taken a big role here lately. As it relates to, it's somewhat tangential here with what's going on recently. You know, it I have a big section in there about Jack's longevity. Jack, from the time he turned pro, 1962, he played in every major through up to age 50, actually beyond. Tiger just turned 50. Look at all the majors Tiger has missed. I mean, it's what off the top of my head, he's missed 15 or 16 majors. Um, Look at the lost opportunities, and so not that you were going to be winning a bunch of them in your 40s, but Jack won three majors in his 40s. Tiger won one. And Tiger, you could probably argue, had everything been fine, was more equipped to be able to win into his 40s because he didn't view 40 as a finishing line like Jack sort of did at one point.
Hmm.
Jack kind of saw 40 as the end. Tiger never saw it that way, but look at how many majors he's missed. He missed two in 2008, two in 2011, two in 14, all the majors in 16 and 17. Obviously, he missed them all in 21. Now, at that point, he's getting into his mid 40s, but if Tiger were healthy right now, would anybody discount him? He's still an elite ball striker, but obviously he's got these physical things that have held him back. So, that is in weighing the debate, that's a big negative for Tiger. He couldn't perform enough. He couldn't be there enough. Tiger has not even played in 100 majors, so and yet he's got like almost 30-year pro career. So it's that's a negative on his ledger for sure, and a real positive for Jack, who was always there.
And I'm enjoying the book. I have not finished it yet, but do you come out and voice your opinion on the great debate, Tiger versus Jack? Do you pick who you think?
Yeah, I actually try to make the argument that there's no wrong answer.
Oh,
If
so
it's
diplomatic, Bob.
but no, Tiger himself has said Jack is the greatest champion. Jack has said that Tiger faced far tougher competition, that he
Wow.
played some of the greatest golf. In the end, I go I go back and forth on this. I go with Tiger for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is field strength. Like I sort of try to make the argument that 15 in Tiger's era is equal to 18 in Jack's,
Mm.
and that winning 82 PGA Tour events to Jack's 73 when nobody after Billy Casper and Jack got to 50 within a couple of months of each other in 1973. They were the sixth and seventh players in all of PGA Tour history to win 50 times. Nobody since then, other than Tiger, has gotten to 50 wins. And Tiger got to 82. So, like, not Tom Watson, not Phil, who has 45. I mean, it's a lot harder to win that many tournaments now than it was back then. It's a numbers game. And so I just sort of try to make the argument that Tiger had it tougher. Yes, Jack played against Trevino and Miller and Watson and Gary Player and Arnold and all kinds of great players, Raymond Floyd, but there wasn't much depth. Tiger played against Phil, VJ, Ernie, Retief, Marco Mira won two majors after Tiger had won one. There were a lot of, and yet look at some of the players who won majors at Tiger's expense, who kind of came out of nowhere. Rich Beam, Michael Campbell, Y.E. Yang. There were more of those type of players in Tiger's time than there were in Jack's. And so I give a slight nod to Jack, but this is not meant to disparage, excuse me, a slight nod to Tiger. This is not meant to disparage Jack. Jack's record is phenomenal. And, if you want to point to all the seconds in majors or, the decade of the 70s, he was only outside of the top 10 in majors, five out of 40 majors. There's so much on both sides that you can point
Absolutely.
to.
My nod would go toward Jack Nicklaus, but it's a shame that Tiger has really not played golf competitively, what, that often in the last 12 years, would you say? I mean, I don't have the stats right in front of me, but there was just
I
so
mean,
much he could have done if he
I
were the
mean,
least bit
two,
healthy.
2018 and 19 showed it. I mean, he was very competitive for that 2-year run. He got to as high as sixth in the world. He was 43, 44 years old in that time period. And as bad as it was for the couple of years leading up to that, then it got bad after that. And he's obviously the car crash changed everything. So yeah, it's very, very unfortunate. But like I've had some people come to me and they want to argue and I'm like, look, to me, this is more about celebrating them both.
Right.
And
Good point.
and and you can go either way. And I also get into other players, what about Bobby Jones? What about Ben Hogan? What about Walter Hagen? People forget about Hagen. He won 11 majors, and he's third on the all-time list. So, and if it weren't for Jones, would we even be counting majors? So, like, there's a lot of nuance in
Yes.
the whole story. And
That's why it's a
look,
fascinating book. And as you point out, 40 years after Jack Nicklaus's crowning achievement in winning that 1986 Masters for his 18th major title, he remains such a prominent figure in the game and has maintained a very positive aura about him
mhm.
and such a positive role model, which in society today is very, very tough to do for somebody of that stature, unfortunately. But you have to give him credit for that, and for Barbara being such a big part of his career and his life. And what, he's 86 years old now, Bob Harig, not in the
Mhm.
best of health. How do you see him hitting, or how long do you see him hitting the honorary tee shot at Augusta National to
Yeah, it's a good
officially start the
question.
Masters?
I hope he can keep going as long as he wants. And Jack's been a terrific elder statesman. I mean Arnold was in his own way too. I mean Jack has just been he's embraced that role. He understands what a big part of history he played in the game. And that Thursday morning press conference when he comes in there, it's still like must listen to.
It is.
Tiger has evolved into that a little bit more, but he doesn't want to really do it as much. Like when he's forced to, he's not bad. Tiger has an opinion on stuff. I think we just would like to hear it a little bit more. And that's, obviously the big one of the big differences between the two.
Well, stay tuned. We'll see if Tiger Woods does indeed show up at the Masters next week. And if so, to what extent? Big, big question mark. Continued success, Bob Herrick. Always a pleasure to talk with you. And go out and buy Golf's Great Debate, Tiger versus Jack. Really enjoyed the read, and continued success. Thanks for coming on Talking Golf.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.